Well, let's just try to keep it, nice. How about the military? All right, the military. Don't you think it would be important for them to know how long it's going to take to hit a target if they're going to be shooting at a target? Because you got to figure out when to pull that trigger. Because if it's a moving target, you want the target and the rocket to meet at the same time, right? So there's lots of other things they have to take into consideration. Okay? But this stuff is used in real life. Other places too.
How did you get 110?
I subtracted 120 from both sides. I got negative 110. When I divided by the negative, it made it positive. Okay, and then somebody said number 26. Number 26 was x squared plus 15x. Minus 15x. Is it 15 or 25? 15. Plus c. Okay, so we had to figure out what goes right here. Well, how do we figure out what goes right there? Come on.
Divide 15 by 2.
Divide 15 by 2 and square it. Divide 15 by 2 and square it. Okay? Don't turn it into a decimal. Leave it as a fraction. All right? 15. Okay, so the question was, what is c? Well, I gave both of these as the answer. I gave 15 halves squared, and I gave what 15 halves squared is, which is 225 fourths. Okay, so that's where that came from. Then the second part was factor it. Well, yesterday we said if you leave it in this form, then all you're looking at is x minus 15 halves squared. Do you have a question, Annalise?
Or you can do 7.5.
Yes, but you're going to need to keep it in fraction form because today we're going to be playing with fractions. Okay, and if you start turning them to decimals, it's confusing.
How do you get 225?
15 squared is 225, and 2 squared is 4. Any other questions? Specifically on numbers 24 to 31.
30.
Number 30. This is ultra important. You're supposed to divide this middle term by 2. Okay, but you can't just take a fraction and say, hey, divided by 2 is blah. Okay? Dividing by 2 and multiplying by 1/2 is the exact same thing. Right? What's 4 divided by 2? What's 4 times 1/2? What's 10 divided by 2? What's 10 times 1/2? 5. It's the same thing. But when you're dealing with a fraction here, the way we work with fractions is we have to multiply by 1/2. That's the same thing, okay? Which means basically you're simply multiplying that denominator by 2. So that's going to be 8 over 6. 8 over 6. All right? And then that factors down to this. And 8 over 6 squared was actually what? 64 over, what's 6 squared? 36. 64 over 36. All right? Don't reduce this fraction.
The answer it was.
It was? Okay, sorry. But when we're doing the equations right now, don't reduce this fraction because it'll come back to haunt you if you do. Just leave it here and it's going to all work together. All right. Anything else? Okay. Today is the 30th. We're finishing section 1-4. We're taking everything we learned yesterday and we're going to bring it to culmination. We're going to go through the whole process and we are going to complete the squares and find our values for x. We have lots and lots and lots of example problems. You're going to be working problems today. You're going to be watching me a couple of times. You're going to be working them on your own and checking yourself. It is very important that you participate. Okay, there is a specific reason why I chose this picture. If you look at the man, he's standing on a board, and right smack in the middle is a barrel that would operate as a fulcrum or as an equal sign in an equation, because if you remember, I've always said an equation's like a seesaw, right? I am. I started a long time ago. All right? Notice he's out of balance, and he's in trouble. When we are completing the square, we are creating something and adding it to an equation that was not there before. So if we only add it to one side of the equation, this is what our equation is going to be like. Okay? And we're going to be in trouble because we're not going to be figuring it out correctly. So if you add something to one side of an equation, what must you do? You must add it to the other side of the equation as well. All right, these are the things you should know. You don't have to write this down. But look at it and ask yourself, am I confident in my skills with adding fractions, reducing radicals, and working with imaginary numbers?
Yes.
Because if you're not, you need to go back and work on it. Because we're going to be doing all of this combined. All right? We're going to have fractions with radicals and imaginary numbers all in one. Okay. Let's get started. Remember, when it's a quadratic equation, which means there's an x squared present, if the only x term is x squared, those are easy. Isolate, take the square root of both sides. If there's an x squared and an x term, first see if you can do what? See if you can factor. Factoring is very easy. But there are no factors of 18 that subtract to give me 4. So I can't factor. So I need another option, and that's what we learned yesterday, completing the square. Before you start writing, I want you to watch and listen. When you are completing the square, our goal is to isolate this because that's what we're going to complete. So we're going to put 18 on the other side of the equal sign, which when we add it, makes it positive 18. Now to complete the square, I have to add something squared, right? But if you remember the picture right before, if I'm going to do this on the left-hand side, what do I need to do on the right? The same thing. So the first thing you need to do when you're going to complete the square, you have decided I can't factor this, is you need to isolate those first two terms and set your equation up this way. Okay? Now, I determine what goes in that parenthesis by this number here. How did we complete the square yesterday? You take 4 and divide it by 2. And that's 2, which means I need a 2 over here. And this factors down to what?
42.
X plus 2 squared. And on the other side, I've got 18 plus 4, which is 22. And that's the only new thing we're doing. From here, we solve. Did you watch the video last night?
I didn't have,
And you promised me. You promised.
I looked at the book.
I know what your promises mean. Yes.
Can you pick up, please?
Yes, ma'am.